to walk on water, a place where we build faith in Jesus Christ, find healing in Jesus Christ in preparation for the second coming of Jesus Christ. My name is Paul, and I wanted to talk about an interesting discussion we had at church today. We were discussing one of Elder Holland's, probably his last talk that he gave. And in it, he brought up a story about a blind man that Jesus healed. And this is kind of the interesting story of this blind man that he healed him. He went to the pool of Siloam, got healed. This is on a Sabbath, but then the Pharisees found about it and they made a big stink about it. And his parents didn't want to explain it because they were afraid of being kicked out of the synagogue, but the blind man kind of confounded the Pharisees. And it was kind of a beautiful healing experience. But the part that I wanted to focus on was the very beginning, the first few verses, and this is in John 9. Verse starting, I'm going to read 1 through 3. And as Jesus passed by, he saw a man which was blind from his birth. And his disciples asked him, saying, Master, who did sin, this man or his parents, that he was born blind? Jesus answered, Neither hath this man sinned nor his parents, but that the works of God should be made manifest in him. And I love this, let's call it culture or thought process that existed at that time. They had this belief that if something physically was abnormal with you, that it must have been a result of sin, either the individual or his parents. And how fascinating is that? There's some sort of connection there with sin and, in a general term, maybe I'll say afflictions. But they didn't consider another opportunity, that sometimes we have afflictions because they allow God to do something amazing with our lives. And how often, or I have wondered, and well, not wondered, I have actually said this. Sometimes when I'm in the midst of afflictions, the thoughts that I hear or that I tell myself might be the kind of, Paul, what did you do wrong? What's going on here? What do you need to do better? Or sometimes it's like, please just get this experience away from me. I don't want it anymore. And I find that often it's very easy to go to this place when we're experiencing afflictions that we question things. We question our actions. We question what we're doing to get out of it. And sometimes it's a little bit more challenging to go to the place of, well, how can God intercede? What miracles can I see in this process? What opportunity is this for me to learn something more about myself and more about God, and do something and become something more through this experience? And in this lesson, there were a lot of comments and discussions about challenging things that people had went through. And there was a very interesting moment. Some people had talked about death in the family that happened to a child a number of years ago, and how that was still really hard. And as we were talking about just in general hard experiences, one brother reflected and asked, would I take that experience away? And initially said, yeah, I would. But then he thought a little bit more and was like, well, I actually learned quite a bit from that experience, and it strengthened my testimony. And so, no, I wouldn't take that experience away again. And in my life, I think I often have many of those experiences. I've shared some of those here on the channel with my health challenges I've had over my life. And at times there have been moments where I have wanted it to just go away. But now, as I look back on it, if you'd ask me, do I want to take it away? The answer is absolutely not. Because I have become something amazing through that experience. If you gave me a crystal ball and I could look what that journey would have looked like going through those health challenges for 30 years, I don't know if I would have had the courage to step into that and say, yeah, let's go do this. But when I can see it in the rearview mirror and see the tremendous growth that has come from it, I feel with gratitude and humility that I was able to make it through it. And obviously there's a lot of help from angels, from family members, from Christ, to be able to make it through those hard times. And then you look back in the rearview mirror and say, this is amazing. Don't take it away. Don't take these experiences away. And so going back to this blind man, is they looked at it, who did something wrong? And you have to imagine during that moment, the blind man had to be praying, can I see? And the parents probably were praying, help my child to see, please heal him. Let's not have him go through all these hard experiences of being blind. And yet for many years, those prayers were not answered in the way that they wanted them to. And because there was something greater at the end of that process. The greater thing was Christ had the opportunity to heal him. And through that experience of healing, we have a very precious doctrine that's now contained in the scriptures. Right? And you wonder, this blind man, as he's sitting here up in heaven, and he's reflecting on his experiences and seeing how powerful that moment is, and how powerful that story is, and teaching a principle, I wonder how much he regrets going through that experience. And I suspect he's probably grateful for that experience too. So this is the challenge that I find that we often have is when I look at something in the rearview mirror, it's much easier to see the good in it. And it's much easier to say, okay, I'm okay with that experience. I don't want it to take it away. But what sometimes is really challenging is when we are in the middle of that experience, it's really hard to get that perspective. I like to equate it with, sometimes it feels like we're drowning. And when you're drowning and you can barely get your head above the water, you don't see that clearly. You're not seeing the full perspective. Your body is screaming to survive. I need to survive. I just need air so I can survive. And so when we are, I guess, in fight or flight syndrome, like we don't have the ability to think intelligently and consciously. We just like, get out of here. But I feel in my life, the journey is to shorten that distance or time, I guess, from when we look in the rearview mirror to a place where we don't need the rearview mirror. We can have that perspective when we are in the moment. And once again, I love this story of Peter. Peter was drowning. And what did he do? He said, Lord, help me. And how often, when I'm in the midst of that drowning, do I say, Lord, help me? And then what does he do? He pulls me up, whether him, friends, some way. He pulls me up. And then he says, O ye of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? And I think that's the key to this idea of how do we shorten the time from that rear view mirror to the present, such that when we are drowning, we have the ability to walk on water, to step out of the drowning and approach our challenges and our afflictions in a more healthier perspective. And the gentle comment by the Savior tells exactly how. O ye of little faith, wherefore didst thou doubt? As we've talked about faith here, that in the context of becoming, faith is often where our attention is. Where are we focusing? Because these afflictions and challenges that we have, they're opportunities for us to become something more than we are. They're opportunities for us to learn more about our Savior, to learn more about his true identity, and to find the inner divinity or discover the inner divinity that we have. It has been my focus to shorten that time, to learn how to focus on the Savior in the midst of those trials. And when the storm is coming, instead of immediately crying out, Lord, help me, to start asking myself the question, what am I to learn? How can this help me to become something more than I am right now? And then I get swept away, right? It's a process. But I find that I more frequently start asking that question, is what I sometimes go more to that place of first I ask the question, what am I to learn? Instead of help me, save me. My hope and my desire is as I learn to change that frequency of how often I ask the question, what am I to learn? Instead of please save me, that is what building faith is. That is how we start the process of learning to walk on water and not falling into the water and start drowning. Thank you for joining me today. As we learn to walk on water, may we start stepping in some puddles.